Hey guys, tonight we're about to embark on a journey that will stretch the limits of your imagination, back to a time when an empire defied the very laws of geography. We're diving deep into the peculiar postal system of the Inca Empire. A network so ingenious, so astonishingly efficient, it might just lull you into a state of bewildered slumber. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you feel the biting, crisp air of the high Andes, sharp and clean, brushing your face? Can you smell the ancient dust kicked up by countless bare feet on a path worn smooth over centuries? You're standing there right now on a narrow stone track that snakes endlessly across towering peaks and dizzying ravines. Imagine the sheer audacity. An empire that spanned thousands of miles, united by nothing but foot power, human endurance, and a system built on whispers and knots. It's so mind-boggling, you probably won't survive this without drifting off into a very deep, historically informed nap. So, before you get utterly comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're listening, drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, almost hypnotic hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Before the Inca even sketched out the first conquest of their monumental empire, you need to picture the Andean world. Not as an empty canvas, but as a vibrant, intricate mosaic of sophisticated cultures. Long before the first Sapa Inca wore his feathered crown, a rich tapestry of distinct societies had already woven themselves into the very fabric of these formidable mountains and sun-drenched coastal plains. Think about the Tiwanaku, those mysterious master builders high in what is now Bolivia, or the Wari, who carved out a significant domain in modern-day Peru. These weren't just scattered tribes. Oh no, they were complex, fully fledged civilizations, complete with their own forms of social organization, awe-inspiring architecture, and, crucially for our story tonight, the very seeds of communication, across sometimes vast and punishing distances. You see, the geography itself wasn't just a challenge, it was a brutal instructor. The Andes aren't exactly a leisurely stroll in the park. You've got soaring, snow-capped peaks that scrape the sky, dizzyingly deep canyons that swallow rivers, parched deserts that bake under the sun, and humid cloud forests where mist clings to everything, all within relatively short, brutal distances. For any culture to truly thrive, let alone dream of expansion, it absolutely had to figure out how to bridge these immense natural barriers. The pre-Incan peoples, in their own ingenious ways, developed solutions. Perhaps it was a rudimentary system of smoke signals, leaping from mountaintop to mountaintop, or a human chain of quick runners carrying vital verbal messages from one isolated village to the next. Historians still argue whether the Nazca lines, those enigmatic geoglyphs etched into the Peruvian desert floor, had any communicative purpose beyond religious or astronomical. But they certainly scream large-scale organization and a shared understanding, don't they? Consider the Mocha, flourishing vibrantly on the northern coast of Peru. They weren't building grand empire-spanning road networks like the Inca eventually would, but their distinctive pottery vividly depicts messengers, often with bare, tireless feet and light clothing, suggesting some form of organized transmission of information. Maybe they were carrying exciting news of a phenomenal fish catch, or the long-awaited arrival of a crucial trading party. It was likely an informal system, built on existing trade routes and strong community ties, rather than a centralized, state-controlled machine. It's a bit like how you might use a walkie-talkie with a buddy in the woods versus the entire global internet. Both connect, but one is a lot more structured and ambitious. These early systems, though perhaps less glamorous and sprawling than what was to come, were the absolutely essential building blocks. They proved unequivocally that communication across the brutal, beautiful Andean terrain was not only possible, but utterly necessary for survival and prosperity. They taught future generations invaluable lessons about the bone-aching challenges of altitude, the relentless need for sheer human endurance, and the immense, immeasurable value of rapid information flow. The very idea of moving information swiftly over great distances, adapting to the hyper-specific demands of the environment, was already deeply ingrained. The Inca didn't invent the concept of a messenger. Oh no, they simply took it, polished it until it gleamed, and scaled it up to an almost unimaginable degree, transforming a mere necessity into a profound art form and the very cornerstone of their burgeoning empire. It was less about inventing the wheel and more about perfecting the absurdly difficult art of rolling it up a sheer mountain face, which, let's be honest, is a much more impressive trick. As those pre-Incan cultures laid their foundational stones, you can almost feel the tremor of something vast stirring in the Andean highlands. What began as scattered city-states and regional powers eventually coalesced under the relentless ambition of the Inca. Suddenly, you're not just thinking about local communication. You're witnessing the astonishingly rapid rise of an empire that, at its zenith, stretched over 2,500 miles, encompassing diverse landscapes and an equally diverse array of conquered peoples. From modern-day Ecuador down through Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile, the sheer scale was mind-boggling, especially considering the time frame. It was like someone decided to build Amazon, but with llamas instead of delivery trucks. And all deliveries were made by highly athletic individuals. Running up mountains, this meteoric expansion wasn't accidental or disorganized. It was a testament to the Incas' strategic brilliance and their absolute mastery of organization. But here's the crucial point for our sleepy journey tonight. How do you manage such an enormous, geographically fragmented domain without crumbling? Under its own weight? How do you collect taxes, deploy armies, disseminate laws, or even just order a fresh batch of exotic fish for the Sapa Inca's dinner, when your territory is a dizzying maze of mountains, deserts, and jungles? The answer, you're about to discover, lay in their absolute, strategic need for a sophisticated communication network. Imagine yourself as the Sapa Inca, sitting in your grand palace in Cusco. You need to know if a rebellion is brewing in the far north, or if a vital crop is failing in the southern valleys. Need to send immediate orders to a general thousands of miles away, telling him to move his troops. Without a rapid, reliable way to send and receive information, your empire would be nothing more than a loose collection of disparate territories ripe for fragmentation.
Ow.
This wasn't just about efficiency. It was about survival, about maintaining absolute imperial control. The Inca understood this instinctively. They weren't just conquerors. They were master administrators. They knew that military might could win battles, but robust infrastructure, particularly for communication, was what truly held an empire together. This wasn't a casual afterthought. It was a fundamental pillar of their statecraft, as important as their agricultural terraces or their intricate social hierarchy. Historians still argue whether this realization came from observing the communication methods of the societies they absorbed, or if it was an internal innovation born of sheer necessity. Either way, they perfected it. So as the Inca expanded, gobbling up smaller kingdoms and integrating them into their burgeoning domain, they simultaneously began to weave this invisible web of communication. It wasn't about building fancy buildings, but about connecting distant communities with vital information threads. It was about creating a system that could carry the emperor's word, official decrees, census data, and reports on everything from gold production to impending droughts. From the heart of the empire to its furthest reaches and back again, it's like building the internet, but instead of fiber optic cables, you're using highly trained human beings on ridiculously tough terrain. A truly peculiar choice, if you ask me, but it worked. It had to work, or the whole Grand Inca experiment would have just collapsed like a poorly stacked pile of potatoes. They knew this, and that knowledge drove the incredible lengths they went to in order to establish and refine what would become one of the most remarkable postal systems in pre-modern history. It's hard to imagine ruling such an empire without it, almost like trying to organize a massive potluck without anyone having phones. You'd end up with 30 potato salads and no main course. With the stage set and the empire's thirst for communication established, you now step onto the very arteries of the Inca's administrative body, the magnificent Capac-On, or the Imperial Road Network. Forget everything you think you know about ancient roads. These weren't mere dirt tracks. They were a triumph of engineering and human will. A physical manifestation of the Inca's ambition and the absolute backbone of their incredible postal service. Imagine a network stretching an astonishing 25,000 miles. It's longer than the Earth's circumference, snaking through the most unforgiving terrain on the planet. If you could somehow overlay it on a map of modern North America, it would. Connect, say, Vancouver to Miami, then Miami to New York, and then back across to Los Angeles. With a few detours up into the Canadian Rockies, just for fun, and all of it without concrete, rebar, or even the wheel. Makes your morning commute look positively quaint, doesn't it? You find yourself walking on a path meticulously paved with fitted stones, sometimes carved directly into sheer rock faces. Sometimes suspended over raging rivers by sophisticated suspension bridges woven from plant fibers. These bridges were engineering marvels in themselves, constantly maintained and replaced by local communities as a form of labor tribute, a system known as meta. Stepping onto one, you'd feel the gentle sway, hear the creak of the ropes, and perhaps if you dared to look down, see the dizzying drop beneath. It was an experience that might make even the most seasoned modern engineer slightly nervous, let alone someone just trying to deliver a message about potato harvests. The scale and engineering of this network were truly breathtaking. The Inca didn't just build roads, it built roads for specific purposes, adapted to specific environments. In the arid coastal deserts, they constructed raised causeways to prevent erosion from infrequent but torrential rains. They carved staircases into steep slopes, some so precise they still defy belief. In the jungles, they cleared paths through dense vegetation, sometimes elevated to avoid flooding. This wasn't a single, continuous highway. It was a complex system of interconnected routes, major arteries, and smaller capillaries reaching into every corner of the empire. It's like having Google Maps, but the map itself is a physical monumental construction, and instead of digital routes, you're looking at actual stone-laid paths that existed for a specific, vital purpose. Every few miles, you'd encounter signs of their careful planning, drainage systems to prevent washouts, retaining walls to hold back landslides, and even strategically placed shelters for travelers. This wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was about ensuring that the journey was as efficient and reliable as humanly possible. Regardless of the weather or terrain, for the Inca, these roads were much more than just transportation routes. They were symbols of their power and their ability to organize vast amounts of labor and resources. They were the veins and arteries of the empire, pumping life and vital information from its heart in Cusco to its furthest extremities. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for such an elaborate road system was military conquest and control, or economic integration and trade. In truth, it was likely a powerful combination of both, but its role in facilitating the rapid movement of information and the very special individuals who carried it was undeniable. The Capacone wasn't just part of the postal system. It was the very foundation upon which the entire communication network was built. Without these incredible pathways, the idea of a unified Inca empire spanning such a vast and challenging landscape would have been nothing more than a fantastical dream. It would have been like trying to run a marathon on a unicycle. Impressive, maybe, but not very practical for world domination. Now that you've traversed the magnificent Capacone, the physical arteries of the Inca Empire, it's time to meet the lifeblood flowing through them, the legendary Chasqui, the elite runners of the Inca postal system. Imagine yourself as one of these incredible individuals. You're not just a messenger. You are a vital cog in the most sophisticated pre-modern communication network on Earth. Your uniform is simple, but practical. A light tunic, perhaps a small bag for your few essentials. And most importantly, strong, calloused feet trained for relentless endurance. You live a life dedicated to speed, precision, and unwavering reliability. These weren't just random individuals plucked from the fields. The Chasqui were highly selected and rigorously trained. Think of them as the special forces of communication. They were chosen for their physical prowess, their keen memory, and their unwavering loyalty to the Sapa Inca and the empire. From a young age, they would have been taught the roots, the hand signals, the specific calls, and the intricate system of the quipu, which we'll get to in a moment. Their training wasn't just about running. It was about mastering the unique challenges of the Andean environment. They had to know how to navigate treacherous mountain passes in all weather, how to conserve energy at high altitudes, and how to identify landmarks even in the dark. It's like a combination of an Olympic marathoner, a mountain guide, and a photographic memory expert. It's all rolled into one supremely fit human being. The Chasqui were stationed at regular intervals along the Capac One, typically within earshot of each other, ready to spring into action. These stations, known as tambos, were strategically placed so that a runner could cover the distance to the next tambo and hand off their message before exhaustion set in. This wasn't about one person running the entire length of the empire. It was a perfectly orchestrated relay. When a Chasqui approached a tambo, it would often emit a distinctive horn call, perhaps a conch shell, to alert the next runner of their imminent arrival. You'd hear that distant, echoing sound, and immediately your muscles would tense. Your mind would sharpen, ready for the handoff. Their dedication was absolute. Chasqui's primary purpose was to deliver the message, come what may. Rain, snow, treacherous terrain, even the occasional puma, though hopefully not too often. For their sake, none of it was an excuse for failure. Historians still debate whether Chasqui were considered an elite class, or if their service was a form of meta, a rotational labor tribute required of all able-bodied citizens. Whatever their exact social standing, their role was undeniably critical, and they were held in high esteem. They literally held the empire's information in their hands and their minds. This wasn't a 9-to-5 job either. System operated. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Messages could be urgent, requiring immediate transmission, day or night. So, picture yourself a Chasqui, standing vigil at your tambo, peering into the gathering twilight, listening for that telltale horn blast that signals your turn. The wind whips past your face, the mountain air bites at your exposed skin, but your focus is singular, the message. It's a system that truly exemplifies human endurance and the incredible capacity for organization. All built around the incredible strength and unwavering dedication of these Incan messengers. It makes you think twice about complaining about slow Wi-Fi, doesn't it? At least your messages aren't delivered by a very fit person gasping for breath at your front door. You've met the Chasqui, those incredible human engines of the Inca Empire. Now let's marvel at how they transformed sheer human endurance into a system of blistering speed and astonishing efficiency. The Inca's ingenious relay system. Forget the image of a single runner covering hundreds of miles, collapsing at the finish line like some ancient ultramarathoner. That's not how the Inca operated. Their brilliance lay in understanding human limits and designing a network that bypassed them, creating a continuous flow of information that could outpace a galloping horse, feat made even more remarkable by the fact that they didn't even have horses. Imagine yourself at a tampu, one of those small, strategically placed way stations along the Capicone. You're the next Chasqui in line, your muscles primed, your breathing slow and controlled, even at this altitude. In the distance, you hear it, the clear, piercing call of a conch shell horn echoing through the mountain air. That's your signal. The incoming Chasqui is approaching, carrying a message from potentially hundreds of miles away. You can almost feel the urgency in the sound, as the previous runner appears. Perhaps a feint on the winding road that rapidly grows larger, you spring into position. There's a quick, seamless handover. Incoming Chasqui might be carrying a quipu, a complex system of knotted chords, or they might simply speak the message aloud, a pre-arranged phrase or report. There's no time for pleasantries, no lingering. The message, whether spoken or nodded, is transferred, sometimes with an accompanying object, like a fresh fish or a special fruit. The incoming runner then collapses, perhaps for a moment, catching their breath while you, the fresh Chasqui, Immediately turn and sprint off in the opposite direction. The message now, your sole responsibility. It's a bit like a high-stakes baton pass in a relay race, except the track is a mountain range, and the baton is imperial communication. These relay stations were spaced at precise intervals, often just a few miles apart, tailored to the terrain. In flatter, easier stretches, the distance between tambos might be greater. In steep, arduous mountain passes, they'd be closer, ensuring that no chasqui was pushed beyond their optimal running capacity before a fresh pair of legs took over. This constant rotation meant that messages moved at an incredibly consistent, high speed, day and night. Without the need for any single individual to perform superhuman, unsustainable feats of endurance. Historians still argue whether the tambos were always manned or if chasqui had a call system to summon their relief. Either way, the handoff was quick. The speed was legendary. It said that fresh fish caught on the Pacific coast could be delivered to the Sapa Inca's table in Cusco, high in the Andes, within 24 to 48 hours. That's a journey of over 200 miles, crossing mountain ranges and diverse climates. It's all without a single wheel or animal draft. Try doing that with today's postal service, though to be fair, they do deliver more than just fish. This wasn't just impressive, it was revolutionary. This speed and efficiency allowed the Sapa Inca to receive up-to-the-minute reports from every corner of his vast empire, and to dispatch orders with a rapidity that was simply unparalleled in the ancient world. It gave him an almost omniscient control, allowing him to react to rebellions, harvest failures, or military threats with a decisive swiftness that kept the sprawling empire unified and obedient. It was, in essence, the ancient world's high-speed fiber optic network, powered entirely by human grit and ingenious organization. You have to wonder if they had a next-day delivery option for particularly important messages, perhaps with a small surcharge of llama wool. You've seen the chasqui in action, a blur of motion handing off vital messages. Let's settle into the unsung heroes of their efficiency, the tampu or way stations. Imagine yourself approaching one of these modest, yet absolutely essential roadside lodges. After a grueling run, perhaps up a steep mountain pass or across a sun-baked plain, the sight of a tampu would have been like an oasis. These weren't grand palaces, mind you. They were functional, strategically located structures, typically spaced every few miles along the Capicone, perfectly timed for a chasqui to complete their leg of the journey. Think of them as the ancient world's version of a quick-stop gas station and rest area combined. But instead of fueling up a car, you're refueling a human being. Each tampu served multiple critical purposes. Primarily, they were rest points. For the tireless chasqui, after delivering their message, a runner could find shelter, a much-needed drink, and a simple meal. This wasn't luxury. It was sustenance designed to quickly replenish their energy so they could be ready for their next shift, perhaps running back with a return message, or just resting before the next turn in the relay. Sometimes a few chasqui would be permanently stationed at a tampu, ready to spring into action when the call came. It was a way-loyaled machine, and the tampu were the cogs that kept it turning smoothly beyond just rest. The tampu were the crucial relay points themselves. This is where the actual handoff of messages occurred. The incoming chasqui would arrive, deliver their message, whether a spoken word, quipu, or a physical object to the waiting, fresh chasqui, who would then immediately depart. The efficiency of this transfer was paramount. Slow down across the entire network. There was no messing about, no coffee break chit-chat. It was a quick professional exchange. Driven by the urgency of imperial communication, but tampu weren't only for the chasqui. They also served as lodgings for official travelers of the empire, such as military commanders, administrators, or religious figures. If you were on an official journey for the Sapa Inca, you could expect a safe place to sleep, food, and perhaps even supplies for your onward travels. This dual function made the tampu vital nodes in the Inca's administrative and logistical network, extending their reach and control across vast distances. They were a visible sign of the state's presence and its capacity to support movement throughout its territory. Historians still argue whether some tampu also functioned as minor storage depots for goods or emergency supplies, though their primary role for travel and communication is well established. The design of a tampu would vary depending on its location and importance. In some areas, they might have been little more than a simple stone shelter, while in more frequented or strategic locations, they could be a small complex of buildings, perhaps including storage rooms and even corrals for llamas, you can imagine. The scene, a weary traveler or a breathless chasqui arriving at dusk, seeing the faint glow of a small fire and knowing they had reached safety in a brief respite. It's a testament to the Incas' practical foresight that they invested so heavily in these seemingly humble structures. Recognizing their fundamental role in binding together an empire that, without such reliable support infrastructure, would have surely fractured under its own immense scale. It makes you realize that sometimes the most important parts of a grand system are the quiet, unassuming ones, much like the little charge remaining icon on your phone that you only notice. When it's red and flashing frantically, you've seen the roads and you've met the runners and their rest stops. But what exactly were these chasqui carrying? How did an empire without a written script as we understand it transmit complex data, commands, and reports? This is where you delve into one of the most enigmatic and fascinating aspects of Inca communication: the quipu, those mysterious and complex systems of knotted cords. Imagine a device that looks at first glance like a fringe of tassels hanging from a main cord, yet within these seemingly simple knots and colors lies an entire universe of information. A language understood by a select few, and the very memory of the Inca state. A quipu, pronounced quipu, is essentially a collection of cotton or camelid fiber llama or alpaca cords, varying in color, thickness, and the direction of their twist. From a main horizontal cord, numerous pendant cords hang down, and from these, even more subsidiary cords can dangle. The magic and the information lies in the knots. Different types of knots, single, long, or figure-eight their position on the cord and the spacing between them, along with the color of the cords themselves, all conveyed specific numerical and potentially non-numerical information. It's like a three-dimensional spreadsheet or a very tactile form of binary code. Long before computers were even a glimmer in anyone's eye, creating a quipu was a specialized skill, primarily performed by individuals known as quipucamayos or quipu keepers. These were highly trained officials, essentially the accountants and record keepers of the Inca Empire. They were responsible for translating data census figures, tribute payments, military supplies, agricultural yields, into the intricate language of knots. They could also importantly read these knots, translating them back into coherent information for the Sapa Inca or his administrators. Think of them as living databases, both inputting and outputting vast amounts of state data. It's a job that would require immense precision and an almost superhuman memory. The genius of the quipu was its portability and its density of information. A single quipu, easily carried by a chasqui, could contain statistical data equivalent too many pages of written text. This made it an ideal medium for transmitting official records across the vast empire. Instead of a runner trying to memorize a long list of numbers or details, they carried the physical manifestation of that data out to be interpreted by a quipucamayok at the destination. Historians still argue whether the quipu was purely a mnemonic device for numerical data and lists, or if it also encoded narrative, historical accounts, or even stories. This remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. If it could, it would be like finding out your shoelaces were actually telling a complex historical epic all along. You can imagine the scene. A chasqui arriving at a tampu. Breathless, not just with a spoken message, but with a bundle of knotted cords. The quipucamayok at the tampu would meticulously unroll the quipu, his fingers tracing the knots, his mind deciphering the intricate patterns, revealing the vital statistics or commands encoded within. This was the silent, powerful engine of Inca administration, allowing the flow of complex information across an empire that had no traditional written language. It's a truly peculiar, wonderfully tactile system that underscores the Incas' remarkable ingenuity and their profound understanding of information management. Having grasped the physical form of the quipu, you now turn to its dynamic role in the heart of the Inca postal system.
Ow.
It wasn't enough to simply create these knotted marvels. They had to be integrated seamlessly into the rapid flow of imperial communication. You've pictured the Chasqui running, but now visualize that runner carrying not just a spoken word, but a silent, tangible message meticulously encoded in fibers. This fusion of human speed and abstract data was where the system truly shone. The process typically began with the quipu at the source of the information. Let's say, for instance, a regional governor needed to report the yield of the latest potato harvest from his province, or the number of new llamas born, or even the count of able-bodied men available for meta labor. This quipu would sit, perhaps in a quiet, sunlit courtyard, meticulously tying knots into the various cords. Each knot, each spacing, each color choice was deliberate, a precise data point being woven into the fabric of the quipu. It's like someone meticulously entering data into a spreadsheet, but with string instead of a keyboard. You can almost hear the soft rustle of the cords as they're handled, the gentle tug as a knot is tightened. Once the quipu was completed and verified, it would be entrusted to a Chasqui. This wasn't always the only form of communication. Often, a verbal message would accompany the quipu, either to clarify its contents, to add a nuanced detail, or to provide context that the knots alone couldn't convey. Just a delivery person, they were often also a verbal supplement, a living footnote to the knotted document. They would then sprint off, carrying this vital information along the Capicone, from Tampu to Tampu. Upon arrival at its destination, perhaps the central administrative hub in Cusco, or another regional office, the quipu would be received by another quipu. This highly skilled individual would then undertake the equally complex task of interpreting the knots. This wasn't a casual glance. It was a careful, tactile reading, running fingers along the cords, counting the knots, observing their types and positions, and noting the colors. As they deciphered it, the abstract data would transform back into concrete information: the exact number of potato sacks, quantity of gold dust collected, the size of a specific regiment. It's a bit like watching a master musician read a complex piece of sheet music, translating dots and lines into a symphony. But here, it's about translating knots into crucial imperial statistics. The accuracy of this interpretation was paramount. A miscounted knot could mean a shortage of supplies for an army, or an incorrect tax assessment for a province, leading to severe consequences. This is why the quipu were so highly respected and rigorously trained. They were the guardians of the empire's memory and its logistical lifeline. Historians still argue whether there was a universal standard for quipu interpretation across the vast empire, or if regional variations existed, requiring specialists familiar with local nuances. This debate highlights just how sophisticated and yet, in some ways, how mysterious this system remains to us. Imagine if your bank statements were a series of intricately tied ropes and only a select few knew how to read them. It's both wonderfully quaint and incredibly anxiety-inducing at the same time. As fascinating as the quipu were, you must remember that the Inca postal system wasn't solely reliant on knotted cords. There was another, equally vital, and perhaps even more immediate, layer to their communication: the powerful role of oral tradition and Chasqui memory. Imagine a Chasqui arriving, breathless, not just with a quipu in hand, but with a message burning in their mind, ready to be recited verbatim. This spoken word was often the primary means of communication for urgent news, nuanced instructions, or information that didn't lend itself easily to numerical representation. Think about it. While a quipu could convey precise figures, the number of warriors, the volume of maize, the amount of tribute owed, was less suited for conveying, say, the emotional tone of a rebellious leader's speech, or the intricate details of a newly discovered gold mine's layout, or perhaps even a joke the Sapa Inca wanted to share. For these kinds of messages, the Chasqui's memory and rhetorical skill became paramount. They were the living newspapers, the walking radio broadcasts of the Inca Empire. When a message was given to a Chasqui, especially an important one, It would often be repeated to them multiple times, sometimes by several different officials, to ensure absolute accuracy. The Chasqui would then memorize the message, sometimes using mnemonic devices or specific rhythms to aid recall. It wasn't just rote memorization. It was about understanding the context, the nuance, and the intended recipient. This meant the Chasqui wasn't simply a conduit, but an active participant in the communication process, a living bridge between sender and receiver. It's like your personal assistant memorizing your grocery list and then improvising perfectly when they realize the store is out of kale. Upon arrival at the next tampu, or the final destination, the Chasqui would then recite the message to the waiting official or the next runner. This was a direct, person-to-person transfer of information, immediate and often impactful. The speed of the spoken word, coupled with the incredible relay system, meant that urgent news could travel with astonishing rapidity across vast distances. Imagine a warning about an approaching enemy army, or a decree from the Sapa Inca demanding immediate action. These wouldn't wait for Quipu Kameok to meticulously knot out every detail. They would be shouted, remembered, and relayed. This reliance on oral tradition meant that a tremendous amount of information, from official decrees to local gossip, though hopefully less of the latter on state business, was carried within the minds of these runners. It adds another fascinating layer of complexity to the Inca system. Historians still argue whether there was a standardized training for Chasqui in terms of memorization techniques, or if it was more based on individual aptitude and experience. Whatever the methodology, the fact that such a vast and powerful empire relied so heavily on human memory for critical information underscores the incredible trust placed in these individuals. It also reminds you that sometimes the simplest technology, a well-trained human mind, is the most reliable. If I had to memorize a 10-minute speech after running up a mountain, I'd definitely prefer a little note on my hand, just in case. With messages flying along the Kapak Own, either knotted in Kipu or etched into a Chasqui's memory, you might start to wonder about the security of all this vital imperial information. How did the Inca ensure message security and secrecy? A system relying on human runners and publicly accessible roads? This wasn't just about delivering news. It was about protecting state secrets, military commands, and sensitive census data from falling into the wrong hands or being altered en route. It's the ancient world's version of encrypted email, but with a much higher physical activity requirement. One primary layer of security lay in the very nature of the Chasqui themselves. As we discussed, they were highly selected individuals, trained not just for physical endurance, but also for unwavering loyalty to the Sapa Inca and the state. Betrayal or tampering with messages would have been an act of treason, likely met with severe consequences. The sheer discipline and inculcated sense of duty would have been a powerful deterrent. Imagine being part of an elite corps where your honor and the empire's stability rested on your integrity. It certainly puts the pressure on, doesn't it? Furthermore, the relay system itself offered a form of inherent security. No single Chasqui held the entire message for its entire journey. Each runner only covered a relatively short segment. If the Kipu was being carried, they only possessed it for a few miles. If it was a verbal message, they only recited their portion before passing it on. This fragmented responsibility meant that even if one Chasqui were compromised, a highly unlikely scenario given their selection, they would only have access to a small piece of the overall puzzle, making it difficult to fully reconstruct the complete message without extensive collusion. It's like a physical chain of custody, where each link only ever holds the package for a moment before passing it to the next. For sensitive verbal messages, an additional layer of security likely came from the use of coded language or pre-arranged signals. While there's no definitive proof of a widespread secret code, it's plausible that specific phrases or turns of speech known only to key officials could have conveyed deeper meanings. A Chasqui might deliver a seemingly innocuous message that, to a trained Quipu Kamiok or military commander, signaled a very specific, confidential instruction. This would be similar to modern military or diplomatic jargon, where a few words can imply a world of complex information to those in the know. Historians still argue about the extent to which such covert communication was employed, but the Inca's organizational sophistication suggests they were certainly capable of it. Finally, the quipu themselves offered a degree of natural secrecy, simply because of their complexity. As you've learned, only the quipu Kumeoks were truly proficient in their creation and interpretation. For the average person, or even a non-specialist official, a quipu would appear as nothing more than a bundle of knotted strings. Without the specialized knowledge to read them, they were utterly meaningless. This inherent unintelligibility acted as a powerful safeguard against unauthorized access to information. It's like sending a top-secret document in a language only 2 people on the planet understand. You could leave it lying on a park bench, and no one would be any the wiser. So, while there were no physical locks or digital encryption, the Inca employed a clever combination of human loyalty, systemic design, specialized knowledge to maintain the secrecy of their peculiar postal system. It makes you think about how sometimes the most secure systems are the ones that are simply too complicated for anyone but the experts to decipher. You've seen how messages, whether spoken or nodded, traveled with remarkable speed and security. But the Inca postal system wasn't solely for urgent dispatches about military movements or tax figures. Its peculiar ingenuity extended to the logistics of perishable goods, transforming the chasqui into an ancient version of a high-speed delivery service for the Sapa Inca's discerning palate and the needs of the elite. Imagine receiving fresh seafood high in the mountains, hundreds of miles from the coast, all thanks to a series of tireless runners. It's the original farm-to-table movement. If your farm was literally on the other side of a mountain range, think about the sheer impossibility of it. Fresh fish caught in the Pacific Ocean, then transported up thousands of feet into the Andean highlands to Cusco. Without refrigeration, without insulated containers, how was this possible? The answer lies in the incredible speed of the chasqui relay. The same system that delivered vital information could deliver a literal catch of the day. A fish once caught would immediately be handed off to the first chasqui, who would sprint with it to the next tampu, passing it to a fresh runner, and so on. The journey was relentless, a continuous sprint to beat the clock and the inevitable spoilage. But it wasn't just fish. The system could transport a variety of exotic fruits, vegetables, and other perishable items that were not locally available. Imagine the Sapa Inca, desiring a specific type of fruit that only grew in a distant valley, or a rare medicinal herb from the Amazonian fringes of his empire. These items, often delicate and quick to spoil, would be carefully packaged and then entrusted to the chasqui. Their lightweight and compact size made them ideal for human transport, and their rapid transit ensured they arrived in usable condition. It's like Amazon Prime, but powered by carbohydrates and sheer human grit. This movement of perishable goods highlights several key aspects of the Inca system. Firstly, it underscores the sheer efficiency and reliability of the network. Could deliver a fresh fish? It could certainly deliver a critical message. Secondly, it demonstrates the centralized control and immense power of the Sapa Inca. The ability to command such luxuries from distant corners of the empire was a tangible display of his authority and the empire's wealth. It wasn't just about sustenance. It was about status and the projection of imperial might. Historians still argue about the frequency and volume of these perishable deliveries, with some suggesting they were a daily occurrence for the highest elite, while others believe they were more occasional, special requests. You can almost visualize it, a runner, perhaps a bit faster than usual, carrying a carefully wrapped package of iridescent fish, its scales still gleaming. It sent a fleeting hint of the distant ocean. Or perhaps a vibrant, juicy fruit protected from bruising by soft leaves, destined for the imperial table. This was a system that catered not just to the strategic needs of governance, but also to the desires of the ruling class, blurring the lines between pure logistics and a unique form of imperial indulgence. It's a testament to the fact that even in an ancient, seemingly austere empire, there was room for a touch of luxury. It's delivered at blistering speeds by some of the fittest people on Earth. It makes you wonder what their version of a customer satisfaction survey would have looked like. Was your fish adequately fresh? Please answer by tying knots. You've seen the threads of the Inca postal system, the roads, the runners, the knots, and even the fish. Now, Let's tie them all together and consider their overarching significance. This entire elaborate, peculiar system was not just an impressive feat of logistics. It was absolutely crucial for imperial control and the effective governance of the vast Inca domain. Without this robust communication network, the empire, as we understand it, simply could not have existed in the way it did. Imagine trying to manage a territory larger than any European empire of its time, stretching across radically diverse environments without the ability to send and receive information rapidly. It would be like trying to run a multinational corporation with only carrier pigeons and smoke signals. The Incas' success lay in their highly centralized administration, with the Sapa Inca in Cusco making decisions that affected millions of people across thousands of miles. This required a constant, reliable flow of information to the capital and commands from the capital. Firstly, the postal system enabled swift military deployment and intelligence. If a rebellion flared up in a distant province, or if a neighboring group showed signs of aggression, Thapa Inca could receive intelligence within days, not weeks or months. More importantly, he could then dispatch orders to his generals with incredible speed, directing troop movements, logistics, and battle strategies. This rapid communication gave the Inca a distinct advantage, allowing them to react decisively to threats and maintain order across their conquered territories. It's the ancient world's version of real-time battlefield updates and strategic command. Secondly, it was indispensable for economic management and resource allocation. Remember those quipu carrying census data and harvest yields? This information allowed the central government to know exactly how many people lived in each region, how much food was being produced, and what resources were available. This was vital for everything from planning public works projects to ensuring that tribute was collected efficiently. If one region faced a famine, the Sapa Inca, through this system, could quickly learn about it and dispatch emergency supplies. From other more abundant areas, this meticulous data collection and rapid response capacity prevented widespread unrest and helped solidify the empire's economic stability. Historians still argue about the exact level of micromanagement the Sapa Inca exercised via this system, but its fundamental role in resource distribution is undeniable. Finally, and perhaps most profoundly, the system facilitated the dissemination of imperial law and culture. Decrees from the Sapa Inca, religious pronouncements, and the principles of Inca governance could be transmitted quickly to every corner of the empire. This helped to standardize administration, enforce laws uniformly, and instill a shared sense of Inca identity among diverse, newly conquered populations. The Chasqui were not just carriers of data. They were, in a very real sense, the carriers of the empire's will and its unifying ideology. It's how the emperor's whisper could become law 1,000 miles away, almost overnight. This intricate web of communication was the nervous system of the Inca Empire, allowing the brain in Cusco to control every limb, every muscle, and ensure that the entire colossal body functioned as a single, unified entity. Without it, you'd just have a collection of dismembered parts, which, while interesting for a history lesson, is less ideal for running an empire. You've been immersed in the remarkable efficiency and power of the Inca postal system. But even the most brilliant creations face inherent challenges and limitations. No system is perfect, especially one operating across such an extreme and unpredictable landscape. As you consider the vastness of the Capacone and the human effort involved, certain difficulties become apparent. It's like trying to run a 5-star restaurant with only one chef and no freezer. Impressive when it works. But one hiccup could ruin everything. Firstly, the varied terrain itself presented an unending series of obstacles. Imagine running through scorching coastal deserts one day where the heat saps your strength and sandstorms can obscure the path. The next, you might be ascending a dizzying mountain pass, where the thin air leaves you gasping for breath and icy winds cut through your simple tunic. Then, perhaps, you plunge into a humid, dense jungle, where paths are quickly overgrown and unexpected downpours can turn trails into muddy torrents. Each environment demanded different physical adaptations, with different levels of endurance and different forms of maintenance for the roads. A Chasqui trained for the coast might struggle profoundly in the highlands, and vice versa, making the selection and strategic placement of runners a constant challenge. Secondly, adverse weather conditions were a relentless threat. The Andes are known for their dramatic and sudden shifts in weather. Sunny mornings can give way to torrential afternoon downpours, hailstorms, or even blizzards in the higher elevations. Landslides, particularly during the rainy season, could obliterate sections of the road, severing communication lines and halting traffic. Rivers could swell, making suspension bridges impassable or dangerous. A Chasqui carrying an urgent message might find themselves stranded, forced to wait out a storm or find a perilous detour, introducing unavoidable delays into a system predicated on speed. Historians still argue about the precise impact of extreme weather events on the reliability of the system, but it's clear they were a constant concern. Beyond the environment, there were inherent human limitations. While Chasqui were elite, they were still flesh and blood. Sickness, injury, or even just exhaustion could momentarily disrupt the flow. While the relay system minimized the impact of any single runner's fatigue, unexpected events could lead to gaps in the chain. What if a Tampu was somehow isolated? What if a Chasqui fell ill mid-run, or suffered an injury on a treacherous path? While the system likely had contingency plans, these were vulnerabilities that no amount of planning could entirely eliminate. It's like trying to keep a perfect schedule for your day when your cat keeps knocking things off the shelf. Delightful, but highly disruptive. Finally, the very strength of the Quipu system, its reliance on specialized Quipu Kumeoks, was also a potential point of weakness. If a Quipu Kumeok at a crucial junction was unavailable, or if the Quipu itself was damaged in transit, the information could be lost or misinterpreted. While presumably rare, these were risks inherent in a system without widespread literacy, or easy redundancy of interpretation. Despite these challenges, the fact that the Inca system operated with such consistent success for so long is a testament to their incredible foresight, adaptability, and the sheer human will to overcome the UHER. The monumental obstacles presented by their extraordinary landscape. You've witnessed the construction, the operation, and even the challenges of the Inca postal system. Now, let's consider its abrupt and dramatic end. You are about to witness the moment when this intricately woven network, the very nervous system of the Inca Empire, began its rapid unraveling with the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors. It's a stark reminder of how fragile even the most robust systems can be when confronted with an entirely alien force. Imagine the year 1532. Francisco Pizarro and his small band of Spanish soldiers, driven by dreams of gold and glory, land on the coast. Their impact on the Inca Empire, and by extension its postal system, was immediate and devastating. Spanish, with their horses, steel weapons, and most importantly, their insatiable desire for wealth, did not understand the nuanced, centralized, and highly organized nature of Inca society. They saw it through the lens of conquest and exploitation. One of the first things the Spanish did upon entering Inca territory was to target the leadership. The capture of the Sapa Inca Atahualpa at Cajamarca was a pivotal moment. The Inca Empire was structured around the absolute authority of its emperor. Remove the head, and the body struggles to function. The communication system, so reliant on centralized commands and imperial loyalty, began to falter as the chain of command fractured. Without a clear Sapa Inca to send and receive messages, the very purpose of the Chasqui network started to erode. It's like unplugging the router. From the internet, everything just stops. Furthermore, the Spanish actively disrupted the system. They used the Capac OWN for their own purposes. But their understanding of its maintenance and delicate relay points was limited. They didn't care about the smooth flow of official Inca communications. They cared about moving their own troops and plunder. They exploited the Chasqui, sometimes forcing them to carry messages for the Spanish, or simply killing them if they resisted. The Tambo's once vital rest stops were sometimes raided or destroyed, breaking the relay chain. The intricate web of human and material infrastructure that took centuries to perfect was unraveling in mere months. The arrival of diseases, like smallpox, which preceded the Spanish in many areas, also played a devastating role. These epidemics decimated local populations, including the highly trained Chasqui and Quipucamayokes. Imagine trying to maintain a complex human relay system when your skilled personnel are dying at an alarming rate. It would be impossible. Historians still argue about the precise timeline of the postal system's decline in different regions. But the consensus is that it rapidly disintegrated as Spanish control spread and the traditional Inca societal structures collapsed. The Spanish, with their own system of written communication and their use of horses, and no need for the Incas' unique methods. They brought their own technology to the table. And in their brutal pursuit of conquest, they effectively dismantled the existing communication arteries of the empire. The once thriving paths, where Chasqui had sprinted with vital news and fresh fish, became routes for Spanish cavalry and convoys of stolen gold. The sophisticated system that bound an empire together was not simply replaced. It was systematically broken, a silent victim of a clash of civilizations. It's a tragic end to such an impressive feat of human ingenuity, much like watching a perfectly crafted sandcastle crumble before the tide. Though the drums of conquest silenced the rhythm of the Chasqui, and the intricate language of the Quipu faded from daily use, the legacy of the Inca postal system continues to resonate. You've journeyed through its remarkable construction, marveled at its efficiency, and witnessed its unfortunate demise. Now, let's reflect on its enduring echo. A testament to human ingenuity that still captivates historians and inspires AEW today. Despite its ultimate collapse, the Inca postal system stands as one of the most sophisticated and efficient communication networks of the pre-modern world. It achieved something truly extraordinary. It unified a vast, geographically challenging empire without the benefit of the wheel, draft animals, or a frenetic writing system. This wasn't just a collection of runners. It was a deeply integrated, highly organized state apparatus that allowed for centralized control, rapid military response, efficient resource management, and the cultural cohesion of millions of people. It makes you realize that sometimes the most advanced solutions aren't necessarily the ones with the most flashing lights or complex circuits, but those that perfectly adapt to their unique circumstances. The sheer scale of the Capacone, the dedication and training of the Chasqui, and the enigmatic complexity of the Quipu remain subjects of intense study and admiration. Historians still argue about many of its specific nuances, the exact interpretations of Quipu knots, the precise training regimens of Chasqui, or the daily volume of messages carried. These lingering questions only add to its mystique, proving that even after centuries, the Inca continued to hold secrets that challenge our understanding. It's like finding an ancient smartphone and knowing it did amazing things, but not quite figuring out how to turn it on. The story of the Inca postal system reminds us of the profound human capacity for organization and adaptation. Faced with monumental natural barriers, the Inca didn't simply surrender to geography. They mastered it, bending mountains and rivers to their will through sheer engineering and a brilliant understanding of human potential. They built a system of information transfer that rivaled, and in some respects surpassed, many contemporary European systems, especially considering the available technology. It served as the lifeblood of an empire that flourished for a relatively short but incredibly impactful period. A testament to what can be achieved when a society dedicates itself to connectivity. So, as you drift towards sleep, let the image of the Chasqui linger, solitary figure, running tirelessly through the magnificent, ancient Andes, carrying the weight of an empire's messages in their hands and their memory. Hear the faint echo of a conch shell horn across distant peaks, signaling the continuity of information, a rhythm that once bound an entire civilization. It's a quiet testament to the enduring power of human connection. Even in the most remote corners of the ancient world, the sounds around you are softening now. It's the world outside your window beginning to blur at the edges. Let your breath deepen, feel the gentle weight of your blankets, and allow your thoughts to slow, just like the evening shadows lengthening across a quiet plain. The Chasqui have run their final leg, their important messages delivered, and the Ancient paths are silent once more. You can let go of all those fascinating historical facts, letting them settle quietly in the corners of your mind. There's nothing left to do now but sink deeper into the calm, letting sleep gently, slowly, pull you away, one soft, peaceful breath at a time. Sweet dreams.